hot? I just started this recording.
It's getting hot in here.
All right. Well, welcome to the Errata Sonata. It's a hot one.
I need some ice Digimon to cool me down. Better yet, Suzune.
Get over your mom, dude. My name is Ian,
And I'm Noah.
and we are back after a non-hiatus. What are we calling this?
A hyplatus.
a horizon.
A ground.
I'm ripping back the curtain. We're just gonna batch record a couple. We're hanging out.
We're coming to you from the past. These are
that's
past
crazy.
selves, not the horizon selves.
I actually have thought about that. Like, could we get away with posting episodes out of recording order? But we call back so frequently to the last episode that it just doesn't work.
No, that'll be even funnier.
You want us to have callbacks that don't
Let's post
exist?
this episode first. And then,
You suck.
3 months later,
You're so obsessed with things being read out of order.
3 months later, we post the last episode.
Okay.
What if I just post the very first podcast and rename it?
Oh, you just want to do episode 0 again? Episode 0 was a fun one.
Why don't we do like a classic anime thing and just chop up the original episode into bits and then give it back out to the people like it's new content?
You want to have a recap episode, as they're called.
Yep.
I mean, we can have fun with that.
Actually, we definitely could be doing that right now for our...
I mean, we could, but it's actually more work to do a recap episode for us than it is to record another one.
No, you don't have to do a recap. Just cut it into like 30-minute chunks and just start posting them again.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what we wanted to do with like Twitter and like TikTok if we were going to advertise more.
Yeah, but like,
if we were real podcasters.
Full podcast episodes. Fine, just give me a soundbite that says Noah Danes.
I love how you like doxing yourself.
Oh, I hate it. Cut that. Bleep that. Redact it.
Cut that.
Noah, December 2023. Digimon Emperor's about to go crazy. Q 7 months later, 8 months later. Digimon Emperor, 4 of in every deck.
I mean, maybe if I like saved a transcript of all of our episodes and like had like a little editor's logbook of like callbacks that I wanted to do.
Yeah, you're the worst editor ever.
It's so much work.
That's why we needed a third-party editor.
You wanted me to get someone else. You wanted me to go
Julia.
on Fiverr. Julia or Julian?
I wanted Julia to edit.
She doesn't even listen to the podcast. That's why she leaves when we record.
Perfect.
Oh, you're right. It's our opportunity.
Yeah. She could like edit it while she's doing her like MMO grinds or her Assassin's Creed grinds or whatever.
She is on the MMO grind. Since you've left us, she got back into Final Fantasy 14.
No, World of Warcraft.
Yeah, she thinks it's cringe.
The World Soul Saga is starting.
That's what it's called?
Yeah.
What does that
Over the
mean?
next 10 years, they'll be putting like an ending to the story that's been developing since Warcraft.
Oh, that actually is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think the idea of like large spanning stories is sick. I mean, like,
This is the first time we actually know what's coming up. Like they've given us like a roadmap. This is the first time they've ever done that.
they've never given you like a heads up in advance before?
Of what the next expansion was going to be.
Yeah.
Like they've like not until they've announced the expansion.
Interesting. That's a very weird experience for me. I would have thought that you would know almost everything in advance.
So we know the next 3 expansion names, and that's the first time that's ever happened.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Like WoW is going through some major changes.
I was gonna say, is WoW surviving? Like, what's the player base
It's still
numbers
doing really
like?
well. I think the last expansion especially is one of the most well-received expansions they've ever put out.
Okay.
And I know like coming from someone who didn't play much throughout that expansion, it was almost no like classic lore. Like it was almost all like new villains.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that it was that well received when they didn't like rely on.
Yeah, it feels like people want to go back and like have nostalgia
Yeah.
and see old villains and.
But I think just a majority of it was just huge quality of life upgrades.
Oh, so it's better to play regardless of the story.
Yep. And they're taking a lot of those and moving forward with it. So it looks pretty interesting. Basically, it feels like they're finally bringing WoW into
The modern age.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good. It's been an old MMO for a while.
I mean, they've been updating it. I still think it's probably the best MMO out there.
I'm not going to disagree because I don't have the knowledge.
For American audiences, at least.
Yeah. No, I don't worry. I'm not about to like jump in and like yell at you and say you're wrong. I think that the idea of relying on tab targeting combat systems doesn't sound appealing to me.
But that's like every MMO.
Well, that's the problem with
relevant,
MMOs,
right?
yeah.
I really wanted to play...
Black Desert Online?
No.
That was a big
Why are
combat
we
one,
going
I
to say
know.
BDO?
Huh?
Isn't that tab targeting?
No, it's I don't think so. Julia played it. She said like it was mostly well known because it has a good combat system.
Oh, I think it's mostly well known because it's like the grindiest.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, maybe my source is wrong.
But no, I was actually gonna say Blue Desert Online, which is not a game. I think it's called. See, I went to say Blue Desert Online, and then I went to say Blue Lock,
Oh, Blue Article.
Blue Origin,
Blue.
something. Blue,
It's the one. It's the one that I was going to play before Genshin Impact came out.
yeah, it's
And then it's been delayed forever.
Blue Origin or something.
I thought it was Article, but maybe I'm
Definitely not Blue Article. It's like Blue Anticlimactic.
Protocol.
You were close with the article. Okay,
That's
fine.
why I was getting confused. Blue Protocol.
That one I kind of want to play.
Yeah, so I was gonna play this, and I was looking into it, and then as I was looking into it, I saw the release date was forever away, and then that night, Genshin Impact was dropping, and Julia's like, "Well, why don't you play this anime game instead?"
Because you can't just say play this anime game instead when it's an entirely different kind of game.
It is entirely different, but she convinced me, and I played Genshin for a full year.
Imagine if I was like, "Hey, you want to play Digimon?" And I was like, "Well, what if we played Genshin instead? What if we played a different anime?"
No,
game?"
I think the comparison is like if we were like, "Hey, do you want to play Digimon?" And it's like, "Well, Digimon's not going to be out in North America for another X number of years. Let's play Pokemon. It's out now."
That's actually what Eric did. He wanted to play the My Hero Academia card game,
Oh,
And they
the
didn't have it.
multiverses game?
whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And they didn't have it, so he was like, "What about Digimon?" and now we're here.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the origin.
This game looks really cool. I really like the Breath of the Wild aesthetic.
Yes.
I want to play it when it comes out in English.
I will probably be down to check it out with you, to be honest. Because as I said, like I've been looking at it for a while. I've been waiting for it to come out.
Oh, I want to play an MMO with someone so bad. I have the least amount of time I've ever had in my life, and I want to play the most soul-sucking game ever.
You could play Final Fantasy with Julia if you really wanted to.
Oh, I tried playing Final Fantasy. It's not fun.
I don't know. I had fun with it, but it was the first time I really had gone dungeon crawling in any game.
Yeah, smack some plates around.
Yeah. Can you put your stuff down and hide in your hovel?
The first thing Julia does when she comes inside your home is pick up a plate and smash it. Every
I
time.
don't know why she slams it down.
Is this why you only use paper plates?
I wish we could go back to those days.
I really want to just get like a 5-man together and dungeon crawl.
I think it would be really cool. I think it's hard to establish that and actually get people on a schedule to do it.
I think that's one of the biggest things that WoW has going for it now.
Good looking for group systems?
Well, yes, but they in the newest expansion, they are introducing something called Delves, which is basically a dungeon that you can play 1 to 5 players.
Oh, it's variable. Okay.
Yeah.
So it just like scales the difficulty based on like
Yes.
how many people you bring?
Yep.
That is cool. I like that. I think that like one of the things that I always go back to is like what I get out of a lot of game systems is the novelty. And it is hard for an MMO to maintain novelty as a feature if it's made to be something that you go back to and you grind and you do again and again.
That's fair. For me, I mean, you like to compete.
I do
You
like to
play
compete.
Smash.
Yes.
You don't play it for the novelty, do you? You play it to like
No, but that's
See-
a constantly like I've been playing Project M since 2014, 2015, depending on what you want to count it. This year I've made like meaningful growth in my skill level that has completely changed how I play the game.
I think that can be done.
I think it's a lot harder. I think it's a lot easier for there to be
Well, because
more knowledge of what the top end can look like.
you got raids, which is obviously like you're spending a lot of time fighting one boss, but it's kind of Elden Ring-esque, I guess.
Yeah.
Where you're just fighting against one thing, but you're figuring out its phases. You're figuring out. I mean, you might not like it because you have to rely on a team. So it's like you might be performing.
I
optimally.
could deal with that. I mean, it's just something that I'd have to grow accustomed to.
To me, it seems like I don't know.
I feel a lot better about being in a team for a PvE experience than a PvP experience.
To me, I immediately think of you as like wanting to raid lead because you'd get a lot out of that.
Yeah, the coordination. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
And I think that's just because you're a control freak.
Thanks.
But I think that you would enjoy that even more than just trying to optimize yourself. Well, and then you just combine the two, right? Like you're optimizing your own play as well as coordinating.
and dealing with like little hurdles and like make I think again I love the idea of MMOs every time I see a story based in an MMO, I go, wow, MMOs sound amazing. I wish I could be in this kind of an experience. And then I look at them in real life and I go, it feels very grindy and unfun. And I don't know how to mesh those two realities.
Yeah, I get that. I never felt like I was grinding or not having fun. The second that I felt like I wasn't having fun, I personally could get up and walk away and be
Yeah, you
like,
skip to the ending.
I'm not going to play. Yeah, exactly. I know that. I think if you're grinding in an MMO, you're like trying to get in the 1%. And that just wasn't me. Like I was trying to push early stages of Mythic and not trying to like be cutting edge, you know? Which is just the name of an achievement to show that you were
Yeah.
pushing Mythic. But I don't remember where I was going with this. But basically, the novelty, like the difference, the improvements where you can see growth are in Mythic keys where they rotate different effects in dungeons, as well as like you're on a timer. They get harder and harder, and you're also playing on a team.
I get it. I'm not confused. I think that there could be fun elements of that. I think it needs to be balanced well. I think that maybe it's hard, but I do probably have to leave tab targeting behind. I don't think I have any interest in the mechanics of tab targeting systems. I need a good group to do it with. Like there's a big social element of teams that like if I am in a group and I'm playing with a group and I'm talking with that group, I think it can be a great time. It can be interesting. Playing not in a 5-stack, playing with randoms or without a chat feature sounds like hell.
You know what's funny? For the first 5 years that I played WoW,
yeah,
I never spoke.
Well, okay, but you were a kid, right?
I started playing WoW when I was 17.
That's a kid. That's a child.
Yeah. So until I was 23, never spoke.
Wow.
I would be in raid. I would type out everything. I would go in the.
Oh chat. No! Hold on. You typed. That's still communicating.
Yeah, but like I would not speak with people. So some of like my best memories are when I was in I was starting to push like high end dungeons.
Yeah.
Like highest on the server for me. With this group of guys, and I would sit in voice and I wouldn't talk with them, but I'd be playing, and I would literally just sit there silently doing my thing, and that was so much fun to me. They're just pumping damage, right?
Yeah.
And so this group of guys that were pushing high keys wanted me around, and I didn't have to like engage with them at all. I could just do my thing and play.
Yeah.
Which, like, I look back and remember very fondly because I was like, not only was I good enough to be invited and included to this, but also
you're good enough to overcome not communicating.
Yeah. I just got to be there and chill and like be a part of it, even though it was with randoms.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's neat. I don't think like, it was the same group of guys that you were playing with regularly.
Yeah. Because
I
did a random dungeon with them.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's do it again. Like
but then they cease being random. Just like once you hang out with them for a few times. I'm more saying like if I just keep playing with like a new batch of people and I keep being like, oh man, I gotta deal with everyone's idiosyncrasies.
That is the annoying part. Is like the annoying part isn't dealing with new people's idiosyncrasies. It's dealing with one or two or however many people that are just not good. Because every time you get into a random group, you're rolling the dice.
Yeah.
And sometimes when that happens and you get in a group where everybody just syncs up, it's so nice. And you just like friend everyone. And you're like, we're going to do this again. Because like that's such a sick feeling.
I believe it. I believe it and I agree. I played League way back when. And like in League, that was a nice experience. But still, I would rather play with a friend who's bad than with a bunch of equally skilled players.
I don't know how I feel about that.
You're not about that energy. I think it's like if I'm playing with a friend who's bad, I can just mentally be like, this is the skill level that we collectively can execute, but we're gonna socialize, so it's okay.
I get that, I do, but it's kind of like how I think. Like Taylor knows how to play Digimon.
Sure,
she will play Digimon with me if I asked her to.
Sure,
she's not good, so it's like, do I want to spend time with Taylor? Yes. Do I love her and adore her for taking the time to learn something that I like? Yes. Would I want to play Digimon with her all the time instead of playing Digimon with better people? No. Because I do want to be on that level, you know?
That's fair. I I think what I'm expressing is a friend who actively wants to play the game, but is just at a different skill level.
Yep.
Whereas what you're expressing is somebody who doesn't like the game, but wants to hang out with you.
Okay, I guess that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you know what? I would like when my cousins would play WoW and they were not on the level. I would be like, if somebody invited me to go out and do something, I'd be like, nah, I'm gonna like in the game. I'd be like, nah, I'm gonna do some dungeons with these guys because it's
Yeah.
fun because it's my boys, right? It's my cousins, so I get that. I also think, and I've mentioned this to you before, that you would have so much fun ruling the economy in WoW.
Oh, I would love it. That's actually that every time I talk about an MMO, that's really what I think about. I love economics, and I follow a lot of. I told you I followed Neopets economies a lot, but that's very limited because there's very limited player interaction within Neopets compared to other games. But
It is so much fun to get like a live system like this where you have got players interacting.
yes,
People-
I was gonna say I follow RuneScape economics, and I
Yeah.
think that's really fun to see.
People post hate mail that they've received because they undercut or they reset a market, something like that. Somebody just recently posted a lot of data on the last year of them playing where they made 87 million gold, which is like, I think it's like 300,000 gold is about $20.
Okay,
So that's a lot of real money.
yeah,
And they posted like all their data and spreadsheets and notes and stuff. And like, to me, that is so cool. I
Yeah.
love just reading that stuff and seeing how they go. Like, I love seeing, I think Ludwig did it too, where he started a new YouTube account and was like, I'm gonna
how can
build up
I?
this YouTube
Yeah,
account.
well, I mean, yes, I do remember. I saw that had happened. I'm pretty sure he made like a content farm YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I think if you don't care about what you're making, I do think you can rise up the algorithm pretty easily.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that that's what this is, but I just love reading the like zero to hero stories, basically,
Yeah, I get that.
where like you start from nothing and
There's like a lot of weird corners of the internet that I really enjoy. There was me and my buddy. I got into all the Elder Scrolls games a while back, and when I did, he showed me an Oblivion blog that somebody had did role playing as an NPC in the Oblivion world and being like, "Hey, I'm a farmer. I'm going to write like 3,000 word blog post every day of my life as this like farmer, like walking around the world, picking grass, not fighting anything, not engaging with the systems, and like trying to figure out the game like as like an alchemist without having any of this requisite skills." And I loved it. And I'm not mentioning it because it's something that I would recommend somebody go to, but it was such a big part of me getting engaged with Elder Scrolls as a whole that I think back to that more than I think back to more or less any combat encounter in Skyrim.
there's somebody that did something similar to that in WoW, where the Pandaria race, when you make a new character, you have like a little starting area, and then once you finish it, that's when you choose which faction you want to be part of, like Horde or Alliance. And somebody was like, "What if I was just a pacifist though?" And so he leveled up to max level just picking like flowers and herbs and stuff. And so every time a new expansion comes out and the level cap gets raised, he levels it
He
up.
goes
Like,
back to grind.
yeah, and like it takes a long time
Oh, I believe it.
because you're just picking flowers. And I think that's so entertaining.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that there's like a lot of cool, niche, weird ways to interact with games.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of times MMOs open up the doors because you've got like a live community that's constantly changing and evolving.
Yeah, and the people can pick up on your story and start following it like during the grind sessions, which I think is also cool.
Did you ever play Wizard 101?
I did, not significantly. Were you a Wizard 101 fan?
I mean, I was a kid. I didn't play it a lot.
You were a child, and therefore, yes.
But I mean, I've always loved like magic,
Okay.
right? Like, obviously,
Noah dreams of growing up to be a wizard.
I just want to be able to shoot fireballs with my right hand and icicles with my left hand.
Yeah,
Is that
you
too much
really
to
are
ask?
all about this.
um,
I mean, good on you. You're consistent with with the power scaling that you want. I've more or less established that I definitively, if I go warrior, rogue, mage, I don't want to be warrior. That's the only one I'm like locked in. I think warrior is boring.
so boring.
But a mix of rogue and mage, that's base as all hell. That's where I go.
That is really cool.
Bard, that's where I exist.
Bard is less cool.
No, well, it's the bard design space rather than I don't need to have an instrument and be singing.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
I'm so lost on what I was talking about now. Oh, Wizard 101. If I recall correctly, it was a card-based system. Why don't we have that for Digimon? Just give me a Digimon MMO using that card-based system. That'd be so cool.
I don't know what you mean by card-based system. Like,
I feel like the spells were on cards.
they
Or, like,
probably
your
were. I
monsters
wouldn't.
or
I wouldn't be
whatever.
surprised if they were. But like, were you playing it like Slay the Spire? Like, were you like dealing cards from your hand and
Dude,
then
I
they
don't
were gone?
remember.
All right, it's fine. I'm pretty sure Wizard 101 is not very well remembered by history. I remember watching a video of like all of the free to play stuff you can do in Wizard 101, and the answer is very little.
Yeah. Well, that's probably why I didn't play it much. I mean, as a kid, I did not have that much access to the internet.
Oh, I had so much. I had too much access.
I felt like, to me, the internet was still just growing when I was young.
It's changed a lot over our lifetimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like, it just felt inaccessible at that age. Like, the age that I was growing up is when like Thoughtbot and stuff would be used for WoW, and like, that just seemed stuff was harder to find online.
It was. I mean, I definitely was a pretty techie kid. And I had an uncle who was really techie, so I got a lot of exposure very quickly.
Like, looking back, I played RuneScape a good amount.
Sure, I did too.
I never completed a single quest. I didn't know how.
I definitely completed quests.
I did not know how. You want to know what I did? I would mine. Well, this is post once like the GE came out.
Yeah.
I'd mine copper and I would mine tin, and then I would walk to the GE and I would post it, and then I'd walk back and I'd mine copper and I'd mine tin, and that is how I spent my time playing RuneScape.
That's fascinating. I will say I made a lot of fires in RuneScape, so I can't give you too much shit.
I made a lot of fires too. I also like my big goal was to eventually chop down a yew tree.
Yeah.
To get, I think it was 80 wood cutting at the time. I just love like going into stuff like that. I love the idea of just being like a gatherer, like a resource management person.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of wish that more games facilitated you being the guy on the team who's like, my combat stats are trash, but I have all of these support skills, or like I have all these items that I brought to the table, and that is my Tribes in Midgard.
We played it before.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
They specifically have classes that like, because a huge part of it is gathering resources.
Yes.
And they specifically have classes that facilitate that, and I love it so much.
I think that is cool. I think it's actually great because I think that one thing that games do really poorly is allow characters to actually have their own design space. Like so many MMOs have tank, DPS, healer, and maybe they'll cross over the line into each other's spaces, but I feel often when I look at games that these characters are just falling into these categories. I'm playing the Trails from Daybreak right now, and the material difference between being a magic attacker and a physical attacker is really just, what are my opponent's resistances? I don't really feel that different controlling the two offensive lines. And I feel that in most games. When I play Pokemon, it's not like I go
Is it a turn-based game?
It's turn-based. It's tactics, so you can move around the field with your characters.
Yeah, because at least in a more action-based game, you'll feel the difference because you'll be at a range.
Yeah, you'll have casting times, or you'll AoE versus single target. I think more often than not, I think the idea of engaging with PvE content is great. I would love to have PvE content be meaningfully engaging and action focused and multiplayer, which is where I get into like, hey, if I had a good MMO that checked those boxes and also existed within an MMO world, I could probably sink some time into it.
Yeah, I think
here's actually I'll come at it with one more. I think an issue of me and MMOs, this is a fundamental issue. I don't think on its own time is something that is worth rewarding. And I think of MMOs largely as being very rewarding for time input.
I can't speak to other ones, but I know WoW time gates a lot of stuff.
Yes.
To make it so that just because you have a full week no work to put into WoW, you won't get ahead of somebody who just comes on.
Well, I mean, that too, but I'm even just talking about like hours input into the game. Like I think that there are, let's say fighting games. With Project M, there are months where I've grinded and thought and like improved at the game. And there's months where I've put a lot of time in, but I haven't really had a growth mindset. And so I just kind of stagnated at my skill level.
So wait, what are you saying?
I'm saying that I don't think, I don't want time to be an active gate. So like what you're saying is right. I just want to make it clear that with fighting games, you can put time in poorly. And
so do you?
Here's what it is. I want it to be more skill testing. I want it to be more skill testing and less equipment testing.
So that like I think that WoW handles that.
Yeah.
By preventing you from just you can only get gear from like heroic raids or whatever raid you do once a week.
That's time gating.
Exactly. So that means that the more you spend time, if you just keep running the same raid over and over and over again because you have more time than someone else, you will not get better gear.
What I'm expressing is I want the performance in that raid to determine what I get, not the fact that I did the raid.
I mean, your performance is like what you're getting is based on you completing the boss. Like that is your performance. But what I'm saying is that because of the time gate, performance outclasses gear. Because your skill with a class will still allow you to perform in a dungeon or in a raid, as opposed to you can't do anything because you don't have the gear.
I don't play enough MMOs to refute entirely, but I just want to hone in on what I'm trying to say, regardless of MMOs, because what I'm trying to express is when I think about games, I want maximum skill expression. I want to know that the better player is going to be winning a massively larger percentage of the time. I want to say time input into the game doesn't just give me an external reward regardless of how I perform, which is kind of why I don't like gear in the first place.
Wait, what'd you say? Time input doesn't affect?
I don't want to get gear that goes, oh, sick, I got...
But didn't you just describe putting time into a fighting game to get better?
That's why I'm taking another swing at it, because I realize I'm putting it in the wrong way. What I'm expressing is, like, I don't really want a generic number to just be like, oh, here's an extra 2% damage. If there's going to be 2% more damage, I want it to be because I performed it better. I want it to be that my sequencing was better, or that I executed on, like, you know, a frame perfect input.
That's still there. What they're doing is bringing the lowest up, but that skill ceiling's still there.
I guess it's always felt with MMOs that there is that I always feel like I'm playing in that grindy period before the floor.
Dude, I played with somebody who was so unreal at the game. Every time he picked up a new class, he would just blow everyone away in terms of DPS, and he would always have worse gear than them. Because he was just good.
I mean, good on him. I actually am glad that exists. I've maybe just not felt it in an MMO experience before. And like when I think about MMOs, I mostly think about gear.
Didn't you just say you haven't really played many MMOs?
Not significantly, not at a high level. Like, but I think that like the moment a game is saying, "Hey, we have gear," unless it's like a given, like, "Hey, everybody is going to get the top gear within like a minuscule amount of playing," in which case, okay, sick. Now we can really just measure skill. If there is a gear differential between me and another person, I'm like, I don't give a shit about comparing our skill levels, because why would I when there's like an arbitrary number on the side that is making it easier or harder for one of us to play?
I guess that's kind of like playing against somebody in Smash though and saying they're running a better character, like higher.
To me, it's like playing somebody in Smash and they've got like a handicap on.
Well, wouldn't it just be like, okay, your character is higher tiered than mine, so this is arbitrary. Unless we are playing the exact same character, there's no true measures.
because there are differences in kind within fighting games. Like what you value as a character, how you want to play. I play the character that I will perform best with. Link is considered a pretty solid mid tier. He's probably like 25 from the top, but I will not perform better with any other character in Project M than Link. He fits my playstyle. He has unique elements that I value, and then I have personal experience with him to help bring those out. So to me, it's like, it's not like I'm like, I would never play against somebody and go, oh, well, you played Wolf or Fox or Meta Knight, so therefore, like, you know, the loss doesn't matter. It's like, no, I came in with a winning mindset. I want to win. This is my best path towards winning. I could have chosen Meta Knight 8 years ago if I was like, hey, I want to play Meta Knight. I think I can perform better with Meta Knight.
I get what you're saying. I do. What I'm saying is, when you sit across from somebody and you flip over your Bukamon and you're playing Mirage, and they're like, I've already lost. because of whatever jank, like, Miotismon deck they're playing. Is that not the same as you're chosen to play, like, a worse character that jives more with how you play?
It is, but I mean, that's also, I think, if we're getting into the realm of cards, specifically, that's also dealing with the fact that there are intentional power differentials, which is to say power creep, and also much stronger
power differentials in fighting games.
Over time, I think like the goal of a lot of fighting games is to get to a point where any character could reasonably win a tournament in the hands of a good player. Like games with no updates are one thing. Like Melee, obviously, there are clear bottom tiers that are never going to be on the come up.
But that's what you prefer.
I do prefer that, but that's a separate element.
Okay.
But with stuff like PM, which has had many iterations over time, it is at a state where right now, like, I don't think anyone should be surprised if a low tier takes a national level event.
Yeah.
It's just, you just need players to be able to demonstrate what they can actually do.
That's fair. And I know it's not the same as like having gear in like.
Yeah, I think it's just the arbitrariness of like a number being added on in an RPG system.
I guess like there's also like, it gets more in depth than that too, right? Where certain stat lines or certain pieces of gear
Value different things.
Yeah, and so suddenly you want to use a piece of gear that gives you less stats overall, but specific stats than the better piece of gear.
I do think that's an interesting decision, and I think that like on a micro scale that can occur, but the way I view it is just if I don't have the top gear, I can't compete with the people who do have the top gear right now.
Like GameCube controller versus fight pad.
Yes, I mean I am a box believer.
So should we believe that those should be banned?
Oh, we're not getting back into this.
Well, you know what? I just watched a YouTube video talking about tech, I guess would be the best term,
sure.
Gear in the Olympics.
Oh yeah. I'm talking about the runner.
Yeah.
The paraplegic runner.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Because he was banned, although one person was allowed to enter.
It's not paraplegic. Sorry, he was missing half of each leg.
Right. So he wasn't born with his legs.
Yes.
So he had blades.
And he was taller than he would have been if you measure his torso versus his legs. Yep. So they said you have to start running with 3 inches less of height.
Yeah.
Which is some shit. But I think that there is value. There's. I don't know, dude. I'm a good example.
Look at Michael Phelps.
That's right. That's exactly it. Look at me. I am fucking 90% leg.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a weird thing to say this is the standard human body, so therefore that's what we're going to allow. But if you want to say you're not allowed to compete at all, I'm actually more in line with that conversation than saying this is the acceptable ratio of torso to leg.
I think that's fair because you're adding something in. If it was just like, because otherwise you can just add however much height you want.
Yeah, and
they have to set a limit. So their limit is, this is the ratio that we're going to go by. I guess. Otherwise, if you wanted like 10-foot extensions, like that's just fine.
Yeah.
They have to set a limit somewhere.
I guess I can understand that, but then if you want to say that, what you have to take is the most extreme end of acceptability. And I'm at that extreme end of acceptability.
I don't think you have to take the extreme end of acceptability.
Why? Because if there's regular runners who have those proportions, why would somebody with disability assistance not also be allowed to reach that same height?
Because they're buying that height. That's literally what it comes down to. Is because they are buying it.
Well, I mean, again, this is more than just disabled players. This is also talking about swimsuits. Obviously,
exactly.
we had made swimsuits. We're talking about shoes and like what amount of like
the glasses, and because you can wear seeing glasses to bring your eyesight up to standard.
You saw all the memes of the shooters, right?
Yes, yeah.
Those were great.
But that's another thing is like you can bring your eyes up to standard, but you can't exceed that. But what if somebody has exceptional vision?
No,
Are you saying that
it's a finicky thing. I mean, I think the reality is that we are at a point of tech being a very awkward conversation. I think that Runner to me was a unfortunate I won't say loss, but like I think he's excessively penalized if
we're
I'm
getting
earnest.
to that point with
I feel
divisions
worse
of sports with women and men.
Yeah. I think it's just that there is not really a great space for catch all competition, and I don't really have an answer. I mean, I'm a good example. In my lifetime, it has gone from me not being able to compete in the Olympics to me being able to compete in the Olympics because my medication specifically increases my precision. So my medication is banned in sports like archery because it's deemed to give you better aim. But I need it to live. So that conversation of like necessary to live versus like whether we should just lose a certain percentage of the population from valid competition or whether we like allow them their aids to like be in the competition. I don't know if there's a great answer. I do think it does get finicky. I think especially when we're talking about running, shoes are my bigger conversation where I'm like, well, we're already allowing tech into the Olympics. We're just kind of deciding what tech is at the acceptable level.
Well, I bought a pair of super shoes last year.
You did, right? I remember
them on.
Yeah. They felt awful to me, but they weren't the right size.
Well, they were like 3 sizes too small for you.
Yes.
And obviously it's not going to be a huge difference. Like we're talking percentage, like 1 to 2% difference over like 20 kilometers.
Yes.
But that obviously adds up.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting to me, like, because I was doing research into the super shoes, but then you go into like the swimsuits that are just straight up banned.
Yeah, they're fully banned because they completely changed the game. But the thing is, once again, those are banned, but like the things that are allowed might come back later. Like, and in tennis, they banned rackets because the way they were put together was deemed too erratic of a behavior. So it was adding spin onto your ball that your opponent couldn't see from the other side of the court. I'm all for standardizing gear, but if you want to standardize gear, you can't then keep allowing innovation to be occurring.
And that's the issue, right? Is Nike straight up said this is going to stifle innovation. And they're right. It's true. Because suddenly you don't feel the need to keep improving your gear because you've got a standard. Like you can't exceed this.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Olympics, like fighting games, should be anti-patching.
Bring it back to ancient Greece.
But barefoot?
Naked.
Oh, hell yeah.
No gear.
No gear.
No gear allowed.
Talked up for the boys.
That's a true even playing
I
ground.
actually, while we were talking about this, I was thinking this to myself. I was like, honestly, barefoot is an interesting conversation. Yeah, it's hard. It's awkward. Even if we took out all of the quote unquote techiness of shoes are still gear. They still are tech. And likewise with swimming, like the moment you're putting anything on, that's tech. Everyone's shaving their bodies. Everyone is doing.
You hear about the wrestler who got disqualified?
No, what happened?
She was 100 grams over the weigh-in. She cut her hair. She drew blood. She was doing everything she could to get under the weight. I think she was for India. I can't imagine cutting yourself or whatever she did. Needles probably. It makes more sense. But I can't imagine like taking blood out of your body to try and hit a certain weight.
Is it like wrestling where they do the weigh-in prior to the fight, or do they do it like significantly prior?
Day of is what wrestling does.
Day of is wrestling? Yeah. Okay. For some reason I thought that a lot of sports did like weigh-ins like the week before.
And then they'll do another one day of.
Oh, they do a second one. Okay.
Or for this, I believe you have to do a weigh-in at the beginning of the like events, and then in the semifinals they do another weigh-in.
Yeah,
like
I mean, that's unfortunate. Again, this is like what all of this is it is people morphing around the rules as written rather than the spirit of the rules.
Yeah.
That is a natural consequence of any high-level competition.
Because the reality is she should just be in a higher weight class.
She should be in the higher weight class, but she's probably too light or doesn't have a big enough build to be in the higher weight class.
Or maybe she is just fine to be in that weight class, but you get such an insane advantage being in a lower weight class.
Yeah,
If
and
you
like
told me that suddenly I could fight against 6th graders if I lost 20 pounds, I'd be like, okay, I guess this is going to be a lot easier if I lose 20 pounds than if I have to fight.
sure, I don't think that's a fair comparison, but I do get what you're saying. Like, and then we're getting into conversations of like, uh, all the bullshit with testosterone conversations or like that shit sucks. I hate having to have these conversations. I hate that like it became such a big deal.
Does it suck?
I think it
I
sucks.
don't know the like.
I'll give you the shortest
Neil
end of it.
Armstrong, was he doing
He was
steroids?
he was doing steroids.
Or was it testosterone?
He was doing steroids, and he said everybody in the competition was doing steroids. So he's like, because of that, I think 8 years of victories were wiped from the record book. They said we can't find somebody who's clean to give it to.
Jeez. Anyways, my point was just like enhancing your body in such a way is just like
There's been conversations about whether we should allow full drug use tournaments or full gear tournaments.
I thought the reason was because it was
It's
just
dangerous.
dangerous.
It's very dangerous. But the reality is, again, people are doing them. The drug tests are insufficient. So we kind of have to start making choices. And it's not just Olympics. I mean, like we've talked about in video games, there is a large conversation about drug use. Drug use is rampant in high level competition.
Yeah.
Adderall being like the go-to example. And I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like once you start getting into rules as written instead of rules as intended, there is so much shit that you can do. Is if all that matters to you, if the world is on the line for whether you win or lose this match, yeah, you'd cut yourself, you'd cut your hair, you'd
and I hate it so
you
much.
take drugs.
I hate that like that's what we do for competitions. And I think that's what's scary about it is because like people will harm themselves to win a competition. So the rules have to be so strict.
They have to be so strict, and also I think that again they can't really be that strict because unless you're gonna start telling people like okay, like unless is shaving hair going to be a mandatory element of being in this weight class? Like once we've decided weight is the metric that we are measuring around, it's like that's hard. I think what you could get closer to doing, and I mean for fucking Olympic level athletes, I would be entirely open to being like, yeah, we're gonna do a daily weigh-in and we're gonna average your weight for the month before the competition. I think that would help normalize the issues.
They would literally just kill themselves from dehydration because they would still do the same thing. Just
you think they would do it for longer?
They would try to extend it for a month.
Well, then maybe they need to do the weigh-in and fight like a minute later. Like it needs to be like weigh-in as they enter the ring.
And so the issue would be just so many people getting DQ'd.
That's okay.
No, it's okay, like when you think about it, but then you have to think about it like suddenly your paper.
Or we can give up on fucking like again. The reason why we have the current system that we have is we are trying. What we are trying to do is we are trying to create a number one, a top placement, and we're like, okay, well, top placement is going too much to weight, so we made weight classes, but the highest of one weight and the lowest of the next weight up, they reasonably could compete against each other. Like what we really can only do is we can have individual matches, and like this pretending that we're able to find the top of the world, the gold medalist, might just be the illusion that we're holding on to.
I just found out that for soccer in the Olympics,
because we don't have just one more thing, we don't have swimming fucking height classes. Like we don't.
No, it's always bothered me because it's the same thing in basketball. Like we have weight classes, but we don't have like height classes in basketball.
Yeah, so it's like I think it's like it's already kind of a ludicrous thing that we're finagling with, and like circling it all the way back. Like when it comes to like gear and conversations, there is not an easy answer. There's not an easy answer for how to deal with medication or disability assistance. There's not an easy answer for how to deal with gear versus like gear to meet par versus gear as enhancement. I think there's not an easy answer for separating sexes. I don't think there's an easy answer for weight classes. I think that sports are messy because we are just trying to fit millions of individuals into what is often like 3 or 4 categories.
Well, it's also just a mess because I can't speak for the Olympics, but for example, like major league sports in North America are, you've got the open league, and then a lot of times you have women divisions.
Sure.
and women would be okay to play in the open league. It's just like the skill level's different.
Yeah.
So we have that separate league just for women. And so then you have to look at like, do we need another league for any other variations, or are they relegated to the open league? But it's the same issue as women where they can't compete in the open league.
Yeah. I mean, it's finicky. I don't want to get too much into this, but I'll just to put a stake in the ground from an uneducated sports perspective. For the most part, because I think that all of these competitive delineators are arbitrary and not very useful, I lean towards a direction of I would rather be more inclusive towards gender identity than I would lean towards the direction of maintaining the sanctity of the competition. But that is obviously, I mean, as we are all aware, a big conversation that has dominated sports for the last
Why can't we
5
just have
years.
an open league?
An open league period.
Yeah.
And it's the same conversation as weight classes. I mean, like, I think that there is a thought, whether right or wrong, that you need to have closed league in order to have people of different groups able to have representation at the top.
But then, like you said, we get into all these delineators where we're saying, okay,
It's
there's
it's
this league
arbitrary.
with this weight class with this height.
I know. It is arbitrary, and it's not what I would consider a good or great decision. But I do get the urge to not just say, sorry, you don't check these boxes, you don't get to play. Which is like kind of what... Well, you don't get to compete at a high level. You're right. It's not that you don't get to play.
And yeah, but then... So then it comes down to stuff like... Those hurdles are still there. Like, for example, somebody has arthritis.
Yeah.
Or carpal tunnel. And they want to play Smash.
Yeah.
That hurdle's still there.
I got a better example. Julian has a much more significant reaction speed than I do. To the point that while we're playing, I'm not gonna flex on the guy. I'm a lot better than he is at Smash. Like, I'm dominating him in Smash. But there are situations where he gets me in where I'm like, oh, I would not be able to react to this and like do reaction tech chases like he does. But then he does it, and I was like, wow, if I could do that, that would really elevate my skill level. That is a physical advantage that I think he has over me.
And like, that's a good point, because somebody might advocate for you being in separate leagues, but then somebody else might say, well, you still beat Julian, which means his reaction time isn't an advantage. So you should just... It's like if I went into the Olympics with the banned swimsuit, I'm still going to come last.
You would, yes.
But is that a reason to say, you know what, that swimsuit, it should be legal because not everyone is going to win with it?
Yeah, I do. At the end of the day, as with most tier lists, most of these differences only matter in the top like 0.001 percentage of players.
And that's what I was saying earlier in like MMOs. Like, so much, like, when people talk about grinding in MMOs or gear,
it matters only at the top end.
Yeah.
I can respect that. I'll acknowledge my lack of education to make too much of a reasoned argument for each of these points. I do think
that's like L cancels too, right?
Yeah,
like 100% L cancels only really matters at like the top of the game.
I'll be honest. I think that's a little bit more relevant, but
you think you couldn't beat me with 50% L cancels?
Yeah, I agree. I could. That's not sort of my thought and my question. I think it's just that getting to a mid-level of competition requires consistent L cancel performance. It is a floor requirement.
I mean,
it doesn't need to be 100, but it needs to be like 100% of the relevant L cancels. So a lot of the time it's like, if you miss an L cancel because you just hit them with a move that's gonna knock them far away and there's no point in L canceling, you'll just let your hand rest. You just won't hit that button. But if I'm doing a low aerial on your shield, I need to L cancel that, because otherwise a mid-level player will just be like, that's a free punish. So it is important.
When you say mid-level, do you mean pools, or you mean people that have made it out of pools?
I am referring to people who would make it out of pools within Ontario.
but not that high.
Not that high.
I think that's mid-level.
This is an issue that happens where like the answer is yes, but when we talk about competition, in order to be the type of person to even go to a competition in the first place,
You're already pretty high.
You're already in like the 5%.
Yeah.
So it's like already probably less than that.
No, that's the thing. It's like people who run heroics in WoW are already like the top 20%.
Yeah.
So much of the player base is just casual. That's like Digimon.
I think this stat is no longer relevant, but I remember I got to master in Street Fighter 6, and I read at the time that was representing like 0.3% of the player base, and I was like, that's crazy. I'm not that good. I'm fine. But that representing like such a small percentage of the player base completely like blew my mind, and it's set to increase over time because new bad players aren't really joining.
Yep.
And not fully, but it has Street Fighter 6 has a tendency to float more players up than more players down. The more matches you play, the more likely you are to have made it to the top.
When I got the email saying I was in 0.01% of OnlyFans, that's when I knew I made it.
I think I've told you this before, that one of my coworkers, his younger brother.
You definitely haven't told me this.
Okay, his younger brother got a email from League of Legends banning him, and in the email it said, "You are in the 0.00001% of toxic players in our community," and he printed it out and he framed it and he put it on his wall.
You haven't told me that. Mad respect.
Yeah, mad respect. Yeah,
that is so funny.
We have once again failed to circle back.
No chapters of Ian.
Okay, but as much as this is, you know what? As I said, I love beginnings. Our beginning was our most coherent section, but this middle book,
we talked so much about the Olympics.
Neither of us are athletes.
We didn't even talk about like athletics. We talked about gear.
We talked about gear. Well, I think gear is an interesting part of it. I actually think the conversation around gear is more interesting than the conversation around sports. But I also think that there is not like an objective answer, and pretending like there is an objective answer is where a lot of this conflict comes from.
Yeah, like when somebody rolls up with art sleeves, I'm like, unoptimal. Get out of here. You're a bad player.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair take.
You need solid color sleeves all day.
All right. I think we will call it there, though. So thank you for listening to the Errata Sonata podcast. For as off kilter as this one felt like it was.
This one,
this one was definitely a hangout episode.
You'll know if you're listening to this episode. I will have this clearly labeled as not Digimon. Please do not listen.
You can always email us at erratasonatapodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at erratasonata. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, or YouTube. And if you leave us a comment on any of those platforms, we will be happy to at least probably read it ourselves. And if it's interesting, read it on there and react.
We'll read everything. Doesn't matter what you say. We will read it word for word. Ian will.
Yeah, I will personally read it.
So just come in with the most slurs you can.
Jesus. Jesus, as one might say.
Speaking of, our Twitter account has 63 followers.
Oh,
but
yeah.
like 62 of them are bots.
Yeah, I think you've told me this.
Yeah, but I just want, when we post these out of order, I want people
Shut
to
up, dude. You literally just told me this an hour ago. Okay, well, I've been banned, so Noah, do you want to hit us with your classic sign off?
Thank you for listening to the Errata Sonata podcast. Night, guys. Got him.
Oh, yeah, you're crazy.